There's people going to jail now.
Have you found anything to show why this piqued the interest of the DOJ and the feds?
Well, we faced something similar when Obama came into office. President Obama came into office. His DOJ started doing investigations of pro-lifers at abortion facilities. And so I can only presume that there was interest at Main Justice. And we learned after Mark was arrested in that outrageous and reckless raid at his home this past Friday, we learned that a senior staffer from Main Justice out of Washington, D.C. will be litigating the case. And we realized that was someone that was actually there as part of the grand jury proceedings. So this has been run out of Washington from the beginning, not out of Philadelphia. And these cases are almost always run by the local U.S. attorney. So this is something that comes from the highest levels of the Department of Justice. And certainly you couldn't have a low-level person authorize a 20-plus federal agent raid at a peaceful man's home without whether it's the Attorney General himself who knew or one of his top lieutenants who approved it. Certainly this goes up to the highest levels.
But they're being unjustly held. 11 years in prison is insanity.
Well, FBI agents raided the home of a pro-life father of 11 in Tennessee earlier this month. Paul Vaughn is the president of Tennessee Personhood.
Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, and Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, that resurrects this case on a minor offense and uses the full force of the federal government and the FBI to descend on this guy's home to arrest him in front of his 7 children.
But if you're not going to let me, then I'll just...
No, I want to know why you were banging on my door with a gun. You're not going to tell me anything?
I tried.
No, you didn't. You did not try. This is not acceptable. Can I have your name? You're not going to give me your name? You're not going to give me any information?
He and nearly a dozen other pro-lifers were arrested and charged with violating the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. The incident happened more than a year ago, and at that time, Vaughn was not arrested by local police. But now he faces up to 11 years in prison.
It's a misdemeanor, if that.
For what are you talking
for the abortion, the FACE Act? Have you?
No.
Oh, you haven't heard this?
No.
So,
I live in Africa. Man.
Yeah, I know you live in Africa. So the FBI has rounded up 11 or 12 people now. One of them is like an 84-year-old grandmother who was praying at the entrance of an abortion clinic. At the time, the abortion clinic came and told them they had to go. Some of them were hit with a misdemeanor for trespassing, I think. And it was over 2 years ago. The DOJ has started opening up cases now of those misdemeanors that were just misdemeanor and dismissed. And they are now charging them with a FACE Act, which is blocking the entrance. And they are facing 11 years.
Wow.
Our government is completely out of control.
Wow. Well, we have a recourse.
Right.
We have a recourse,
Right. So
at the ballot box.
But what if there isn't really a recourse at the ballot box? What if the majority of American citizens continue to support the government using tyrannical force like this towards men and women who only want to defend the lives of innocent preborn children? What if the majority of American citizens seem to support policies that treat preborn babies as completely disposable, depending upon whatever the mother wants to do with the baby? That's what seemed to happen in this year's midterm elections. Vermont Proposal 5, which would create a constitutional right to personal reproductive autonomy, passed with over 75% of the vote. Michigan Proposal 3, which would create a state constitutional right to reproductive freedom, including decisions about all matters relating to pregnancy, such as abortion and contraception, passed with over 56% of the vote. Even more shocking, Montana Legislative Referendum 131, which would enact a law making any infant born alive at any gestational age a legal person, a protection that already exists under a federal law passed 20 years ago. It would criminalize healthcare providers who do not make every effort to save the life of an infant born during an attempted abortion or after labor or C-section. This did not pass with over 52% voting no. Just to be absolutely clear, the majority of residents in Montana support having the option to end the life of a born alive infant. We live in frightening times where evil is legalized and celebrated, and righteousness is illegal and criminalized.
In our world today, rulers are designing a culture that protects the immoral. It even has reached the point where it desires to protect criminals and makes those who do good afraid. When the criminals are unrestrained because they don't fear the consequences, but the police are restrained because they fear the consequences of stopping criminals, you know everything is turned on its head. Our government is the source of lies and the protector of liars and the enemy of those who speak the truth. It praises the evil and persecutes the good. So God's design for government has been entirely corrupted. As these divinely designed spheres of control in human society descend into chaos, the government will cease to function the way God designed it, and in fact, it will become the enemy of the divine design. It will turn everything upside down. It will become the punisher of those who do good, like putting James Coates in prison for preaching, but letting rioters go free.
And now Pastor Coates, as I understand it, has been arrested and has been detained.
Romans chapter 1 is more true and more relevant today than ever before. We are living in a nation where God has given this nation up in its blatant sin and rebellion against God. And we are living in a time when this nation is experiencing the severe judgment of God. Of course, we Christians who live in the West are not experiencing anywhere near the level of opposition and persecution that Christians in many other countries are experiencing.
There are Christians throughout the world, especially in the 1040 window, who are being jailed for their faith, having their freedom taken away, and even being martyred for their faith. That's persecution. In the West right now, we're experiencing some difficulties, some inconveniences.
However, the level of opposition to Christians and Christianity continues to grow in Western countries to the point where some Christians are now experiencing the wrath of the government and culture towards those who seek to uphold and defend righteousness.
There are inconveniences that could turn into persecution in the future. For example, laws about homosexuality and transgender, certain laws that relate to the family and the rights of parents, certain things like this could eventually lead to more persecution in the West. There have been families in the West, for example, families in Germany who had to flee from Germany, Christian families who wanted to homeschool their children. They wanted to take the education of their children into their own hands, and they had to run away from Germany because it's illegal to do that there. So it's very easy to see how changing worldviews, changing ideas, and changing laws in the West, particularly in Europe, could easily and very quickly lead to the persecution of Christians.
We are seeing a seismic change in people's worldviews today in our nation and culture, so much so that what was once unthinkable just a few years ago, such as the idea that men can be women, that women can be men, and that ending the life of preborn children, even after the point of birth, should be a celebrated right. And this seismic change in the worldviews of the vast majority of Americans today should be an ominous sign for Christians who reject and oppose the policies of the most powerful people in this country. So as Christians, what do we do as we live in the midst of a culture that hates us and wants to punish, even arrest us for defending truth and righteousness, for defending the innocent lives of preborn children? The answer is difficult, but simple. We continue proclaiming truth. We continue proclaiming the gospel. We continue fighting for righteousness. We continue defending the most helpless among us. And we continue training others to do the same. And if we suffer for this, if we are persecuted for this, if we die for this, we praise God for giving us the privilege of representing his glorious name.
He is unwavering and unflinching in the face of death. Why? Because essentially, this is 2 Timothy in a nutshell. I have preserved the gospel, I have proclaimed the gospel, and now I am going to endure suffering to the point of death because of the gospel that I have preserved and proclaimed. And when they kill me, take my place, both in preserving and proclaiming, and if necessary, in dying